Good afternoon. How are you today? Well, the sun is out, okay? So Jefferson is probably writing down that this indicates that there's a high pressure, barometric pressure, because the sun is out. But it's chilly, so, it's mixed. I'm going to have to get a weather person to tell me what's right or wrong. But it's 46 degrees, and today I'm a little overdressed because I just didn't enjoy having a chill for half of the distance I was out yesterday. So what's new? I think it's interesting how our children, this obtuse, anonymous group of people are invoked when adults want something to happen. We want to protect children from what they're saying to each other on the internet or being exposed to. But when somebody's going to shoot them, not so much. And I get the feeling that we find it easy to attack the children because we suspect they do such terrible things, we have to protect them from themselves. So I think we should celebrate the advances of children or younger people. I think that's a better kind of country, don't you? And United States students nationwide, the statistics stop falling for delays in reading and math. Now, I always thought that was what would likely happen. Didn't everybody else? Because we thought it was more important, or certainly I did, and if my daughter had been in school, she wouldn't have been going to school. We would have been tele-schooling. And a lot of parents did that. And, some may have been teachers and more able to teach their children, and those children did better. But if you can live a decent life, a year or two from your studies, I really don't think matters. And I know they're educators. We got to keep it going and doing it and everything. But since I lived through it and was one of those kids who hard pressed myself to study and read, I don't know that all of that was essential. And my brother, who did a lot less and was naturally brilliant, he did very well. So it's not the same for everybody. In fact, when I said my brother should go to college, my dad said college isn't for everybody. And neither my dad nor my mom nor my brother went to college, but he made a really good living writing code. And he got pretty sophisticated at it. And as I had done it for odd jobs when I was younger, because of my math and science studies, I couldn't compare to my brother. So I think it's good to celebrate our children when we do something, when they do something. There is the usual, that is that we have this question of politics and policy. So should we have been hitting 85 targets in Iraq and Syria in response to the 3 servicemen who died as a result of a drone attack in Jordan? And then there were others, 47 other people who were injured. Now, as a kid, when we had a fight and they weren't so treacherous, softer hands, and lighter weight. But it usually started with 2 people arguing, and then it got to a point where one would say, "Oh yeah," and the response to that often was, "Oh yeah," and they go back and forth. It's like a ping pong of "oh yeahs." And so my rule was, if I got into that situation and the other person said, "oh yeah," I immediately hit them because I knew where it was going. And the thing about those fist fights was 2 hours later, we'd be playing, handball down the river, Skelsey. We'd be doing friendly things with each other. And we even had slap fights. But that's not what the United States wants to do with Iran. That's not what some Americans want us to do. They want us to risk, World War III? I think even Iran would like to take a step back from it. I don't think its citizens want it. They would be living in the war as targets, but people do crazy things. Look at Israel and Hamas. So the question is, are we going to get through this without the oh yeahs escalating into World War III? And I'm not sure how we do that, because we're calling each other out and we're posturing. And this is a presidential election year. And the president probably does well politically because there's an instinct that we don't change horses in midstream, meaning presidents, if there's an election during a war. So that's my concern, and we hear it more and more expressed by people who are in a better position, who have access to the information to know these things are bad or terrible, and we're all going to suffer what comes out of it, because Johnson learned the hard way that you can't have guns and butter, meaning you can't have a war and have a flourishing economy at home. I think it's good that Biden is probably getting support for going to South Carolina. There are pictures of him at church services, and as a candidate and somewhat active in campaigns, I've given my fair share of speeches in mostly Baptist churches, but not exclusively. And I have a attraction avoidance to it. The feeling I have is maybe I shouldn't be giving this speech here, and am I only doing this during campaign season? And was this a more natural thing for somebody, a person of color, who'd be discriminated against, to seek a forum that should be safe for a church? And as we know, churches were not entirely safe back in the earlier years, and we have to watch even today for how there are attacks on churches. So in any case, Biden has appeared in churches in South Carolina, and I think we can expect him to see more. And so adding to the women that are moving toward his support, which has always made sense, persons of color are also moving toward him as well. So now there are some out there who think Trump is winning the delay lottery, if you will. It remains to be seen. There's at least one prosecutor's office who is in a position to put him on trial, and that's the DA in Manhattan. And it was the first indictment, and it's evolving, and that's a very solid office. And when I was thinking I wanted to be a prosecutor, now I don't know if I would have been accepted, but I debated between the Southern District, U.S. attorneys, and the state, and I just thought I thought the federal would make more sense, given my feeling about that area of the law and so forth. And I think it was right for me to go there. But there have been people who've done both federal and state, and there have been outstanding prosecutors in the DA's office, particularly Manhattan. And one of my teachers at Columbia Law School was a product of that office, and he was amazing. Professor Uviller. When I was thinking of leaving the law, I went to a reunion at the law school, and he was there, and he always reminded me of what Ichabod Crane would look like. He struck me as a tall, thin man, a very nice manner, very persuasive, and he saw me, and he started to have a friendly argument with me, sort of like our neighborhood street fights and slap fights. And so I engaged him, I was no longer a first or second year law student. And so we went at it, and the people gathered around and listened to us. And then when we stopped, we had a private conversation. And I had just left the Hill, and he asked me what I was doing. And I told him several things. He said, no, yeah, but what are you doing in the law? I said, I'm thinking I'm not doing the law. And Professor Avila said, oh, John, you have to do the law. And I said, why? He said, did you see how much fun you were having when you were arguing with me? What a true teacher, huh? And I said, you're right. And he literally turned me back to the law because of that discussion. How do you find what Joseph Campbell said is the bliss that you follow? And I think the answer is you're constantly recalculating who you are and what opportunities you need to not just survive, but to live and to enrich your life. Now, let's go back to the kids. Remember that the other day we had this hearing, and what were they talking about? They were talking about, oh, we got to save the kids from the internet. But the invocation of that subject is to invoke a section of, I think it's the Child Decency Act, Section 230, which has to do with the immunity that was granted by Congress to host internet servers so that they would not be held liable for everything those who used their platform, the ones who ran the platform wouldn't be held responsible. Now, this is not without limitation, but that is the thrust of it. And there have been efforts to try to figure out how to change that. Now, I do not want the government deciding, however imperfect the present system is, what we can talk about. And so I don't want them revising Section 230 so that the government has a hand in what we talk about. Because that sounds like a prescription for autocracy and dictatorship like no other. So that's another visit to the child legislation we're concerned about. There's a strange thing happening in Kenya. Natural gas is seeping out of the ground and being made into a product that they circulate. It's caused explosions and all sorts of bad stuff. And so I almost have the position that if you're going to do any kind of energy reversions, you stay away from things in the ground, fossil fuels. And that includes uranium. And we have to support and underwrite renewables and shed what we don't have to have, and wires and electricity and so forth, because it's just too much. The last student thought I have is it's an older student about to go to graduate school, and he was looking to find what's more colloquially called the chicken from hell. And he found bones at a dig that suggested it wasn't the chicken from hell, but it was another species. So I wonder, in parallel, if we're finding a new species of politicians in our sad days. And my first reaction to that thought is probably not. We've had miserable, unethical, evil, self-aggrandizing, hating people since the first letter in Phoenician that somebody could write. So Trump is not unique. He's our recent problem. When I was being taught by the Jesuits, I thought that when they told us a bad man was our problem, my reaction was that they meant we were supposed to fix the bad man. It was that kind of a problem. But that's really not it. What it is the fear that you're missing out. Why don't you do what that criminal does and get the things that person gets? That's the challenge to an honest man or woman. Oh, look how easy it is. And, well, it's not that easy. And on top of it, it's destructive of not only those around you and whoever are on the wrong end of the con, it also destroys you, who you are. Lastly, I have been asked whether I favor AirPods or earplugs. And the truth is I've done both. And I thought it was annoying when you no longer can make that choice with some of the things that came out, like the cell phones, for example. And Apple's not the only one. And sometimes, because you have to make electronic communication, it doesn't work so well. And so those you save and have access to, whether by ear or AirPods, is the best way, I think. So have at it. And so that's all I got for today in my wandering through the issues that are kicking around. And so until tomorrow, have a good time. I probably get out later because I'm writing another brief that's due this Wednesday, close of business. So it's a substantial one. So I'll be working at that when I'm not on the road. So I say goodbye to my cathedral of trees, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.